300 billion barrels, more than Saudi Arabia, the United States, and Russia combined, the largest reserve any nation has ever reported. And yet Venezuela is going broke, barely able to turn a single drop into the fuel in your car. You've been told it's sanctions, but the economists who started asking found something worse than sanctions. Here's the strange part. The oil was never the prize. The prize is a machine, and Venezuela doesn't own it. On paper, this is the richest ground on the planet. Roughly 303 billion barrels of proven oil, the largest reserve any nation has ever reported. About 1 out of every 6 barrels on Earth sitting under a single country. At today's rate, that's enough oil to keep pumping for centuries. By every number that's supposed to matter, Venezuela should be a superpower, a Gulf state on the wrong continent. So here is the question this whole video is going to answer. How do you sit on the biggest fortune in human history and go bankrupt? Start with the oil itself. When you picture oil, you picture a light, golden liquid that gushes out of the ground. Venezuela's oil is not that. Most of it sits in the Orinoco belt, and it comes out as extra heavy, sour crude around 8 degrees on the oil scale loaded with sulfur. That's not oil, that's tar. Closer to the asphalt on your street than the fuel in your car. It's so thick it won't even move through a pipe on its own. To ship it, you have to blend it with lighter oil up to 1/3 of the mix, which means the country with the most oil on Earth has to import oil just to move its own. Raw, this tar is nearly worthless. It only becomes money when a machine tears it apart, and that machine is the whole game. And Venezuela knew it. Decades ago, it understood the trap better than anyone. So it did the smart thing. It went out and bought the furnace. In the 1980s, its state oil company bought a stake in an American refiner called CGEP-Go. By 1990, it owned the whole thing. 3 massive refineries on the U.S. Gulf Coast in Louisiana, Texas, and Illinois, nearly 800,000 barrels a day of capacity, engineered to crack exactly the kind of heavy tar Venezuela pumps. Think about how clever that is. You own the oil and the machine that turns it into money, sitting right inside your biggest customer's country. For a while, it worked. Venezuela pumped 3.2 million barrels a day and fed the American economy. And then it gave the whole thing away. You own the oil. You own the refinery. You win. Except you don't, because the reserve was never the prize. The choke point was never the oil. It's the furnace. And Venezuela was about to lose it. Here's the machine. To turn 8-degree tar into diesel and gasoline, you need a specific, brutal piece of equipment called a coker, a unit that superheats the sludge and cracks the heaviest molecules apart. Cokers are rare and expensive. Less than half of all American refineries even have one. And the biggest concentration on the planet sits on the U.S. Gulf Coast. The refineries that soak up almost 1/3 of the world's heavy, sour crude. That is the real map of power here, not the reserve under the Orinoco, the furnace on the Texas coast. Whoever owns the coker owns the tar's only path to becoming money. And Venezuela had built its entire economy on being able to reach it. Then the lock snapped shut. In 2019, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned Venezuela's state oil company, froze it out, and severed the pipeline to its own refineries. The furnace Venezuela owned was suddenly a furnace it couldn't touch. Production, already gutted by years of neglect, collapsed from 3.2 million barrels a day down to about 540,000. And see it go, the American furnace Venezuela had bought to save itself, is now being sold off in a U.S. courtroom to pay Venezuela's creditors. A judge is auctioning it for roughly $7 billion. The oil giant bought the machine to escape the trap, and the machine got repossessed. Locked out of the furnace it owned, Venezuela had one option left: sell its tar to the only other buyer with the machines to take it, China. Small independent Chinese refineries started buying it up, often relabeled as Malaysian to slip past the sanctions. China now takes around 80% of everything Venezuela exports. But here's the humiliation. because the crude is hard to refine tar, and because it's sanctioned, Venezuela has to sell it at a steep discount, recently around $13 to $15 a barrel under the world price. So the country with the most oil on Earth ends up handing it to one buyer for pennies on the barrel, rich in oil, dead broke. And that is still not the bottom of the trap. Underneath all of it is the debt. Over the years, China lent Venezuela an estimated $50 to $60 billion, and it wasn't paid back in cash. It was paid back in oil. Tankers, not dollars. Venezuela was shipping hundreds of thousands of barrels a day just to service what it owed. Then, in early 2026, the ground shifted. According to U.S. officials, American forces removed and captured Venezuela's president, who reportedly now faces charges in New York. And under a reported energy deal, industry monitors say the flow of Venezuelan oil is being routed through U.S.-controlled accounts, which means China, the creditor holding tens of billions in oil-backed loans, may never see the barrels it's owed. Follow that all the way down, and the real fight in Venezuela was never about the reserve. It was about the furnace that turns the tar into money, and the note that says who gets paid first. Whoever owns those two things owns Venezuela's oil, and Venezuela owns neither. So was Venezuela robbed, sanctioned into poverty, and then stripped of its oil? Or did it never really own that wealth in the first place because a reserve you can't refine, can't sell, and can't pay your debts with was always just a number on paper? That's the real lesson, and it's bigger than one country. We're taught that whoever owns the resource holds the power. Venezuela is the proof that that's a lie. The resource is the easy part. The power lives one step downstream, in the machine that processes it and the debt that finances it. Own the most oil on Earth and you can still go broke, because you don't own the furnace that turns it into money. The choke point was never the oil. It's the furnace and who you owe. Greenland's dirt. Venezuela's oil, same trap, different atom. Own the resource, lose the furnace. But there's a third country running the exact same play right now on the one metal your electric car cannot run without.